Have you ever stepped into a room that knew too much about you? The classroom had been silent for years by the time I returned, and still the air remembered everything chalk dust that never truly vanished, the honeyed creak of the window latches, the soft click of a wall clock that had outlived 3 headmasters and a remodel. My palm slid over the cool brass of the door handle, and for a second I could hear the ghosts of attendants, surnames called, voices answering here like promises. I wasn't here for nostalgia. I was here because Miss Harrison Elena now, at least on the invitation, had texted me after the alumni panel wrapped, the words landing like a spark on paper that had waited years to catch. 5 minutes? Room 2C. If they haven't turned it into a server closet, they hadn't. Stood alone in the doorway of 2C, front row desks aligned as if still bracing for pop quizzes. Sunlight poured in long and angled, catching the faint film of chalk on the blackboard and turning it into silver. On the board's lower ledge, a single white stick remained, worn to a nugget too small to write with, too meaningful to throw away. It felt like a dare. Francesca? The voice behind me soughed the word, but didn't disguise its power. I turned, and there she was. Elena Harrison had not, in fact, stayed the same. She was a little older than the last time I'd seen her. On graduation day, a crease at the corner of her mouth that hadn't been there. Hair pulled back in a way that made the line of her neck feel like a sentence you weren't ready to interrupt. Her jacket was the same navy she used to wear, but cut sharper. Her eyes, the same impossible clear gray, now tempered like steel kept in velvet. She smiled, and I forgot how to stand like a person who hadn't once spent every Wednesday morning, trying not to watch the way she wrote dates on the board. You came. She said I didn't think 2C would still smell like pencil shavings and ambition. I managed. Ambition always smells like pencil shavings, she said, stepping into the light, her shadow crossing the first row. It's cheaper then. Cologne and twice as honest. She reached past me and closed the door with a soft click, not secrecy so much as intention. Thank you for staying after. I know alumni nights can be a gauntlet. It's all champagne and within reason bragging, I said. Hard to compete with the orthodontist who saved a whale. Her laugh was low, unpolished. It slid into the room like a familiar song. And you, Francesca Moretti, you saved any whales lately? Just deadlines. I lifted the alumni badge still pinned to my blazer, and a museum exhibit on protest posters that made an emeritus professor cry, in a good way. Of course you did. Her eyes warmed, and with it, everything I thought I'd outgrown. You always did love a well-placed argument. She moved past me to the desk, the same scarred wood island where she'd once balanced stacks of essays in a chipped mug that said history happens, as if the mug had hands. She touched the desktop, lightly, fingertips mapping old nicks like Braille. The gesture was so gentle it felt almost private, I told myself. She said that if they'd turned this room into a server closet, it would be a sign to act like an adult and go home. And if they didn't, then we weren't done talking yet. She glanced up. You look startled. I'm surprised, I said. You were the last person I expected to text me. That makes 2 of us. She picked up the chalk nub, turning it between finger and thumb, white dust bright against her skin. The panel ended, and I thought, this is ridiculous. Just say it. Say what? That I liked seeing you there? That you asked better questions than the donors? That I wondered if you still argued with the same precision you did when you were 18? My mouth opened, then closed. The clock ticked. Each second, a polished pebble dropped into still water. I'm 24 now, I said, because my brain was a fire alarm and this was the one thing it permitted. I know, she said softly. I looked you up before I texted. Heat rose in my cheeks. There was nothing illicit here. Not anymore. We both knew it. Still, the charge line between what had been proper and what was now possible hummed, alive and thin as a string of light bulbs. I remember you, she added, almost as an afterthought that wasn't, not as a student. As you. The classroom leaned in. So did I. The alumni night had been a blur of faculty smiles and catered hors d'oeuvres served by students practicing inequality with grace. I presented on women who built movements with paper and glue, my voice tightening when I reached the part where the city declared their posters litter. Afterward, there had been 1,000 hands to shake. It was only in the courtyard, breath finally threading right, that my phone chimed, room 2C. No signature. None needed. Now, with the room folding itself around us like a book I'd dog-eared, I became aware of every quiet, the HVAC's restrained hum, the faint roll of a projector that had not been turned on, the sound of my own pulse when Elena set the chalk down and walked toward me. You didn't have to come, she said. I almost didn't, I confessed. It felt too cinematic, risky. Her smile tilted. I've learned that risk often disguises itself as a closed door. She stopped a pace away, close enough that I could see the fine dust of chalk still clinging to the edge of her nail. You're allowed to leave it open, she added, a softness undercutting the line. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was keeping hostage. I think I wanted you to ask. Then let me ask, she said. How are you really? That question, delivered with full weight, did dangerous things. Alumni nights are built on scaffolds of pleasant lies. We exchange them until the structure stands upright. But Elena's gaze insisted on something truer. I'm good, I started, then saw her mouth twitch and surrendered. Dizzy, a little lonely, too much coffee. I think my apartment has a vendetta against my hot water. The museum is a miracle and a mess. I'm learning how to be brave out loud. Her expression softened to something that undid me. There you are, she murmured. Hello. My laugh came out frayed but real. Your turn. She propped one hip against the desk and considered. I'm also busy, not lonely. Exactly my calendar won't let me be, but there's a difference between being surrounded and being seen. I teach fewer sections now, more curriculum. I go to more funerals than weddings. And sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. because a 17-year-old in the third row said something reckless and bright, and I didn't answer it the way I wanted to. And how did you want to answer? With time I didn't have. She looked at the clock. We have some now. The room didn't applaud, but it wanted to. We sat on the edge of the first row desks like conspirators. She asked about the exhibit. I told her about the boxes. That arrived unlabeled at back doors, the smell of old glue like sugar gone wrong, the discovery of a handwritten note behind a poster. We were here. She told me about the school's newest initiative that would make everything better by making everything harder, about the student who had taught her to see reconstruction through recipes instead of laws. The conversation walked a tightrope between past and present and never looked down. You know, she said after a while, the last month you were in my class, I marked a star in my grade book next to your name. I blinked. For what? For the day you waited after everyone left, and instead of asking about your grade, you told me the truth about how tired you were. Her mouth soft at the corner, that new crease, a parenthesis around a smile. You were 18 and already knew how to tell the difference between ambition and collapse. That's rare. I told you because you asked, I said, the memory arriving with its old heat, the emptying room, the weight of her attention. The way I wanted to say, I don't know how to be this person they think I am and somehow did. I asked because you look like you were carrying things alone. Her eyes didn't waver. I'm proud that you're still here, that you brought your stubbornness forward with you and left the apology behind. Agitation rose in me, The good kind, the kind that fizzes under your skin when you recognize that someone has been tracking your constellation all along. I didn't leave all of it, I admitted. I still say sorry too much. Then don't, she said. Not to me. It wasn't a reprimand. It was permission. Something in. My chest unlocked. I should have stood. I should have suggested coffee. I should have remembered that however adult we both were, the room itself made everything feel like a confession. Instead, I said, "Do you ever miss it? Teaching?" She asked. "Power," I said, mouth moving before my fear. "Not the ugly kind, the good kind, the kind that holds a room steady. The kind you had here." Her laugh was almost a sigh. "I didn't have power," she said. "I had attention. And the responsibility that came with it. The power was always borrowed from the subject, from the students, from the trust they gave me without knowing it had a name." She tilted her head, considering me. "Do you miss giving yours away?" For a second, I forgot to breathe. She had put her finger exactly on it the way I'd spent years avoiding my own intensity by handing the reins to whoever seemed most certain. "Sometimes," I said honestly, "it's easier, cleaner, feels like safety." "And now?" she asked. I met her eyes. "Now I want to choose when and to whom." The fluorescent lights hummed, a halo of electricity above us. Elena did not move closer. She also didn't look away. "That," she said, voice low, "is the difference between surrender and abdication." We were both too aware of the door. Too aware of our bodies, the way posture can be a language when words risk too much. I felt the urge to fill the quiet and refused it, choosing instead to let the silence say what it wanted to. Elena glanced toward the board, then back. "Do you want it to see something I used to do at the end of May?" she asked, the shift gentle, an off-ramp offered. "Always," I said, grateful and greedy at once. She walked to the chalkboard, lifted the knob, and wrote a single line across the bottom in her deliberate, slanted hand. "What did you learn that has nothing to do with the test?" The sight of it hit me like summer dot. She stepped aside, chalk dust paling her fingertips. I asked it every year and then watched them panic. The ones who needed to be right were miserable for a full minute. Then they wrote. She half smiled. "You wrote that there is a difference between being loud and taking up space." I kept that one in my desk for a long time. Blood rushed everywhere once. "You kept why?" "Because it reminded me to do it too," she said simply. I went to the board before I could talk myself out of it. The chalk felt both foreign and exactly correct in my grip. Under her question, I wrote in smaller letters than I meant to, that wanting is not a crime. My hand shook when I finished the period. Elena was close enough now that I could feel the warmth of her there even before I turned. When I did, her eyes were on the words, then on me. "Whose permission do you need to write that larger?" she asked at the floor, tilted in the good way. "No one's." "Then do it," she said. I erased the sentence and rewrote it at the center, larger, the chalk singing faintly as it moved. "Wanting is not a crime." I underlined it once, then again, because I wanted to. Elena's breath left her on a sound eye. Wouldn't have heard if I didn't know the shape of it. "There she is," she murmured. When I faced her, the room seemed to ease into the posture we had given it. She reached for my lapel and, with the kind of grace you can't practice into, being unpinned the alumni badge and set it on the nearest desk. The intimacy of it undid me more than anything grand could have. "There," she said. "Now you're just you." "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. "Which part?" "The part where I'm not translating myself into acceptable shapes. You just did." Her thumb lingered near my collarbone, not touching, simply drawing the perimeter of a distance she would let me close. "Francesca," she said, and hearing my name in her mouth like that no title, no role felt like a door opening. I stepped forward the inch she hadn't asked for. She didn't step back. "What do you want?" She asked out the question didn't. It didn't prod me towards something she'd chosen. It asked for my language, not hers. I swallowed. To stop pretending I don't think about you when I see a stick of chalk. Her laugh wasn't laughter. It was recognition. Honest, she said. Good. And I want to know, I said the words right because they were mine. What you meant when you said we weren't done talking? That there are conversations we postponed because time and propriety made poor chaperones, she said. And because I couldn't ask you to tell me truths you hadn't had time to find yet. The corners of her mouth softened. But tonight, you're not my student, and I'm not your teacher. We are two women who know better, who can choose better, and who can walk out of here if better is a boundary. The clock clicked from 8:14 to 8:15. Outside, a car door slammed, far away and irrelevant. I'm not walking out. I said, I know, she said, and the gentleness in it nearly leveled me. Still, you needed to say it. She lifted her hand and at last touched the place her gaze had been measuring, a thumbprint of warmth at the base of my throat, a touch that asked and did not take. Francesca, she said again, lower this time, a note held. If I kiss you, it's because you want it. If you kiss me, it's because you chose it. I choose it, I whispered. Then come here, she said. I did, crossing the narrow space of the first row as if I'd trained for it. Her mouth met mine not with hunger, but with certainty. The kind of kiss that isn't a theft, but a promise written in a language both of us already knew. I had imagined 1,000 versions of this. None of them were this quiet. The silence made a cathedral around it. When we separated, we didn't step apart. Her forehead rested against mine. The classroom settled its weight in the right places. Hello, she said again, and this time I laughed for real. Hi. We stood like that long enough for the clock to speak twice. When we finally leaned back, she searched my face the way people search maps, making sure of where they are, not where they wish to be. I didn't plan to do that, she admitted. Me either. Lies make poor foundations. So do plans? I said. She smiled like a secret. True. I reached for her hand without asking, may I? And she let me take it, allowed rather than surrendered, the difference as clear as the chalk on her fingertips. Can I ask you something? I said. You can ask me anything. What surprised you most about tonight? That I'm not afraid, she said. That you didn't come here because nostalgia dared you to. That you came here because the present did. I didn't realize I'd started crying until she lifted her free hand and, with that same thumb, brushed away the proof. It's all right, she said. Let it be what it is. What is it? I asked, half laughing. Woman who learned how to want, she said. And another who wants her without apology. The PA system groaned awake somewhere in the building, a janitor testing it or a timer hiccuping. We both startled, then laughed at ourselves like thieves caught stealing nothing but time. I should lock this, she said, glancing at the door out of an old, sensible instinct. Don't, I said. She looked back at me, and in that look was the conversation we would spend the next months having about openness. About secrecy, about who gets to decide which doors stay shut and which become invitations. All right, she said. We'll leave it open. And we did. We sat again at the front row, hand in hand. The chalkboard's declaration glowing faintly in the failing light. Wanting is not a crime. Under it, Elena wrote a second line smaller, a footnote in her tidy. Script. Only be honest about it. I can do that, I said. I know, she replied. That's why I asked you here. The clock moved on, indifferent. Outside, the courtyard lights blinked alive. In room 2C, we began something that wasn't forbidden so much as carefully, deliberately chosen. Two adults in an old room, agreeing that the past could be honored without being reenacted, agreeing that the present deserved a better conversation. The Kind you don't have to whisper. The door stayed open. We left it that way when we walked out of room 2C, the hallway stretching ahead in long bands of light. The custodial cart stood abandoned at the far end, a mop uplifted like a flag, and our footsteps stitched a new line of history down the runner. I felt raw and grand now, in the same breath, as if the air outside had been rearranged into something I could finally breathe. Elena slowed at the stairwell and turned. The corridor hummed the soft electric tenor of a building old enough to complain but too proud to quit. "Can I walk you to your car?" She asked that the question was ordinary. The heat behind it was not. I nodded, and we moved together toward the exit, our hands very nearly brushing and very deliberately not. The glass of the front doors reflected a version of us with distance folded between like a careful apology. Outside, night had draped itself across the campus. The courtyard lamps pooled gold onto the brick, and the fountain made its easy conversation with the dark. "Rules," Elena said, as if resuming a topic we'd been speaking about all along. "We should have them." "Which kind?" I asked, half teasing to disguise the thought of my heart. "The kind that turn a cliff into a path," she said. "No more roles, no pretense. We're adults. We do this deliberately or not at all." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I tucked. "Away, deliberately," I echoed. She glanced at me, pleased. "Then here's one. No apologizing for ordinary wanting." "I'll try." I lifted my chin. "I'll do it." "Good," she murmured, and something gentle in the way she said it slid under my ribs and made a home dot at the car. I fumbled for my keys and nearly dropped them. She pretended not to notice, and then, in the way of someone who has never once not noticed, reached into her jacket pocket. "I was going to leave this on the desk," she said, offering her palm. Resting there, wrapped in tissue like a relic, lay the chalk nub from 2C. But I remembered you always hated finding gifts after the fact. You like to know the shape of the thing while your hands are still warm. Is it that obvious? I asked, already smiling. "It always was," she said, and her smile wasn't coy. It was proud. "Take it. Consider it. A license, no. An assignment. Any wall. Any mirror. Any page. Write the sentence until the muscle knows it." I understood, without unwrapping it. Wanting is not a crime. The words chimed like a bell in my sternum. I took the small weight from her hand, the cool dust soft against my skin. "Thank you," I said. She nodded toward the tissue, toward my pocket, toward my pulse. "Text me when you're home." "How do you have my number?" Her eyes warmed. "I teach history, Francesca. You think I can't find a phone number?" We laughed, but behind it, a thrumming. She'd looked for me on purpose. It felt like sunlight through the side window at noon, direct, warming, honest. I slid behind the wheel. She didn't close the car door. She left that choice to me. "Good night," she said. "Not goodbye." I asked. "Not tonight," she said, and stepped back into the yellow pool of the lamp like the ending of the first act dot. The next few days unfurled in a rhythm that had the audacity to feel normal. The museum demanded its rituals, emails, lights, labels that refused to align with the casework by a fraction of an inch. My hair did the humidity thing it does in spring, gentle anarchy. I wore linen like a prayer. In slivers between tasks, my phone flashed her name, Elena Harrison. The texts were precise as her handwriting and somehow warmer. "Elena, 9:42 a.m. Are you sleeping or arguing with a spreadsheet?" "Emmy, 9:43 a.m. both. I am a woman of contradictions." "Elena, 9:44 a.m. Then you are proof that dialectic lives dot at lunch." A photo? A coffee mug on her desk, a book open to a page with 6 lines underlined. No caption. She didn't need to tell me this was how she said thinking of you when she couldn't say thinking of you out loud. That evening, After the museum closed and the interns dispersed with the grace of foals, my apartment trembled with its usual. Symphony neighbors moving furniture for sport, pipes negotiating with the building's old bones. I unwrapped the chalk nub and held it in my palm, then drew the sentence on my bathroom mirror in a ghost white hand: "Wanting is not a crime." Under it, I wrote a smaller line: "Mine. Only be honest about it." The words hovered like a weather warning I wanted the sky to obey. I stared at them while I brushed my teeth, while I washed my face, while I let the sink water run on too long, just to hear something moving. My phone chimed. Elena, 8:11 p.m. Saturday. I'm leading a walking tour for my seniors' protest routes around the city. Will you co-lead? No speeches. Just bring your eyes and your specific kind of stubborn. I sat down hard. The tour. The streets I knew better than I knew my own step count. The students, her students. The invitation shone with possibility and risk. The part of me that loves the quiet safety of an archive flickered. The part of me that had written on a mirror answered for both of us. Me, 8:12 p.m. Yes. Boundaries? There was a pause, then the three dots turned into a paragraph. Elena, 8:14 p.m. on campus. We are colleagues, curator and teacher. No lingering in doorways. No glances you'll flinch from later. You run the show when you're speaking. I run it when I am. When we're done, we leave with whoever we arrived with. Then we meet off campus where the menu has paper napkins and the wine is poured with questionable generosity. I breathed through the adrenaline of clarity, like standing at the top of a Ferris wheel and realizing you could love the height. Me, 8:15. P.M. Copy. I'll be there. Elena, 8:15 p.m. Wear shoes you can forgive. She knew me too well. It was alarming how quickly alarming became comforting. Saturday dawned with a sky that had finally remembered how to be blue. I chose black trainers, a mid-length dress that read as professional if you don't look for trouble, and a denim jacket I carried through more rallies than relationships. I tucked the chalk nub into the inner pocket superstition, masquerading as preparation, and met the group at the northeast corner of the square. They were exactly what you'd imagine: seniors with backpacks like tactical gear, undergrads leaning on the architecture of their enthusiasm. A few parents trailed at a polite distance, let in on the secret that saying goodbye begins before commencement. Elena stood at the center of them, attention like a tide. Seeing her in her element was like watching a conductor hear music before. The orchestra touched bow to string. This is Francesca Moretti. She told the circle, and the words landed in me with a measured elegance, an introduction, not a defense. Curator, alumna, the reason you will look up tonight how wheat paste is made. The students smiled, some amused, some pretending not to be. Elena's eyes flicked to me with a private invitation. Take the lead, if you want it. I did. We traced the old routes, the path where women had marched for suffrage under skies that threatened rain, and men who promised worse. The corner where a silent vigil for a shut-down library recessed into song because someone in the second row forgot their fear long enough to remember they had a voice. I showed them the spots where glue had outlasted policy, where paper had peeled and left behind the ghost of letters like the bones of a sentence the city couldn't fully scrub away. Elena peppered in the context, the scaffolding, the law, and the language of people. We made a good call and response. At the fourth stop, a student asked the question that lives under every ethical conversation. Did it work? I answered with my whole chest. The city didn't change its mind, but the people changed each other's, and that's the only mind that ever really matters. I felt Elena's attention catch and hold. It felt like the warmth of a hand on your back you didn't realize you wanted until it steadied you across the threshold. Halfway through, we crossed in front of the courthouse, and a colleague of Elena's appeared as if conjured by the smell. of students and a clipboard. Mr. Patel, history department's cheerful realist, always in a blazer that tried harder than he did. Professor Harrison, he called. Hijacking Saturdays again? Never hijack, Elena said, smiling. Only requisition for educational purposes. She turned to me without a tremor. Raj, this is Francesca Museum of Civic Memory. She's lending us her brain. Bless you, Mr. Patel said genuinely. I've been trying to make them care about ordinances. Maybe glue is sexier than paragraphs. It always was, I said, and he laughed, unoffended. We moved on. I didn't look at Elena. She didn't look at me. We didn't need to. The choreography held dot by the final stop, the old print shop window dusted with a fine lace of paper ash. A memorial to a fire no one remembered starting. The group had thinned to the few who wanted extra credit, and the few who wanted the feeling. A good question leaves behind. Thank you, Elena said to them all, and the words fell over the circle like the end of good weather. Remember, the smallest text still takes up space. They dispersed in Knott's Red's home, brunch promises. One last photo of the shop window with a jawline in the foreground. Mr. Patel raised 2 fingers in a salute and vanished. The square exhaled. She was forgiven. Elena asked when we were alone, voice lighter, a backstage tone beloved to actors and thieves. Conditionally, I said. They'll ask for restitution later. Dinner, she said. Off campus, I confirmed, and she nodded. The rules glowing like exit signs where we needed them dot. We chose a bistro with scuffed wood floors and a chalkboard menu doomed to smudges. The server brought us water in bottles, already sweating in bread that made the air smell trustworthy. We sat at a small table by the window because we wanted the light, not because we wanted to be seen. How did it feel? She asked once the first grace of appetite had passed. Holding a circle full of strangers who wanted your voice? Exactly like you said it would, I answered. Like music. Like I'd been humming under my breath for years and finally sang. She smiled at her glass, then at me. I like being right when it makes you larger, not smaller. A group of 20-somethings at the bar cheered for no reason obvious to us and every reason obvious to them. It was Saturday, and they were together, and the beer hadn't learned yet how to disappoint. Elena's attention slid toward the noise and back, and in the quiet that followed, she reached into her bag. Your surprise, she said, as if we were already in a ritual we'd invented and could not bear to stop. You've already given. Chalk, I said. This is less on brand, she said, and handed me a thin envelope. Inside, a printed program draft. Title at the top in black, clean font. The City That Protest Built, a walking exhibit. Below it, a list of sites, dates, objects.